All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a virtual trek through a truly fascinating mix of harsh, unforgiving geography and deeply rooted mythology over in the Indian state of Uttarakhand. We're exploring a massive phenomenon known as the Himalayan Mahakumbh, or the Nanda Devi Raj Jat. We're going to unpack exactly how an ancient religious pilgrimage perfectly intersects with modern ecological survival.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of a 280-kilometer barefoot journey led entirely by a four-horned ram? I know, it literally sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel, right? But this is an awe-inspiring reality. This grueling trek weaves together extreme human endurance with a cultural tradition that has survived for centuries. The ram, known locally as the Chowzingamita, is considered totally sacred, and it actually leads the procession through some of the most treacherous, high-altitude terrain on Earth.
And to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're talking about, we have to look at the number 12. This massive pilgrimage, it doesn't happen every year. It is organized only once every 12 years. It requires such an immense amount of preparation, resources, and spiritual energy that it strictly follows this cyclical calendar. And that's exactly why it has rightfully earned the title of the Himalayan Mahakumbh.
Now, let's talk about the physical toll of this whole thing. 280. That is the distance, in kilometers, of this trek through the high-altitude Garhwal Himalayas. Just to put that into perspective for a second, this journey takes up to 3 whole weeks to complete. You've got pilgrims crossing raging rivers, navigating dense forests, and climbing up into literally thin air, entirely on foot, all to honor their deity.
But I want to make sure we ground this folklore in reality. Because you might be thinking this is just some local myth told around a campfire. It's not. It is a heavily documented socio-ecological phenomenon. Academics and researchers study the Rajjak extensively. In fact, back in 1985, a major youth study expedition actually documented ancient iron arrows embedded deep within trees along the route. That provided hard archaeological evidence of the exact paths used by past rulers and pilgrims for centuries.
So, tracking our virtual pilgrim's journey, the whole thing officially kicks off down at Nadi village. From there, the massive procession eventually reaches Wan village, which is the absolute final inhabited settlement on the route. Then, they ascend into the high alpine meadows of Bedni Bugyal, before finally culminating at the sacred pond of Homkund. Understanding this chronological progression is absolutely vital to grasping just how much the trek escalates, both physically and spiritually.
Section 1. Nanda Devi's Divine Journey.
The entire heartbeat of this epic journey is centered on the goddess Nanda Devi returning from her maternal birthplace to her husband Lord Shiva's home at Mount Kailash. The really crucial takeaway here is the emotional weight of this event. She is treated affectionately by locals as a daughter leaving her maternal home. We aren't talking about a distant, abstract deity here. The people of Garhwal and Kumaon revere her as family. The departure is deeply, deeply emotional. The procession is officially led by the royal priests, the Natyal Brahmins, and it's marked by hundreds of dolis, or palanquins, carrying the spirit of the goddess, hoisted by devotees who are literally shedding tears of farewell.
Section 2. The Guardian's Gate.
As the procession climbs higher and finally reaches Wan village, again, the final inhabited settlement, we enter the domain of a really surprising guardian deity named Latu Devta. According to local legend, he is the fiercely protective brother of Nanda Devi. The story goes that while trying to quench his thirst, he accidentally drank raw liquor instead of water. The wildly potent drink caused him to lose control, create absolute chaos, and ultimately lose his tongue. Because of this, he serves as the final guardian before the high meadows. The Rajjat simply cannot move forward without stopping in Wan to seek his blessing.
Section 3. The Blindfolded Guardian.
Now, pivoting from that chaotic myth, we find a very eerie, highly rigid modern-day reality. The inner sanctum of his temple opens only once a year, usually on a spring full moon. When it does, the priest must enter entirely blindfolded, with his mouth strictly covered. Meanwhile, the devotees? They aren't even allowed near the temple door. They have to stand and pray in total, respectful silence, from behind ropes 75 feet away. It is an incredible display of sensory deprivation and deep reverence.
So why this extreme secrecy? Well, there are 2 prevailing myths. The first suggests he was punished by Nanda Devi for his intoxicated behavior and ordered to remain locked away in the dark forever. The second myth suggests something a bit more mystical.
That he actually resides in the form of Nadraj, the Snake King, possessing a gem so phenomenally bright and powerful that the priest has to be blindfolded just to protect his human eyes from being blinded by the light. But whichever one you believe, the end result is a ritual of absolute, unbroken discipline.
Section 4. The Sacred Alpine Meadow. Once the pilgrims pass through that Guardian's Gate, they ascend to a place of just unbelievable natural beauty. At 3,354 meters in elevation, this lush green landscape is surrounded by crystal-clear views of Himalayan peaks and is adorned with incredibly rare blooms, most notably the Brahm Kamal. But as you can imagine, surviving up here requires some strict rules. And this is where things get absolutely fascinating. Look at how beautifully this ancient past juxtaposes with our scientific present. For centuries, folklore dictated that in the Bugyal, there could be absolutely no shouting, no singing, and no playing of flutes because it would anger the gods. Well, today, science tells us that loud sounds in these specific acoustic environments carry a super high risk of triggering deadly avalanches. Folklore said the deities are highly sensitive to human actions. Science translates that to, hey, this is a highly fragile ecosystem, easily destroyed by waste. The religious rule of no disrespectful behavior directly mirrors modern court bans on plastic. It turns out the ancient myths were actually enforcing survival.
Section 5. Preserving the Bugyal.
Because the ecological threat to these meadows is incredibly real, modern legal interventions have had to step in where folklore alone just wasn't enough anymore. The Allahabad High Court ruled way back in 1997 that tourist camps had to be removed due to the severe environmental harm caused by plastic waste. Fast forward to August 2018, and the Uttarakhand High Court went even further. They recognized the unique ecological significance of these high-altitude bugyals and instituted a total sweeping ban on all overnight stays. They even ordered the removal of permanent structures and fiber huts that had been built up for tourists. The courts explicitly prioritized the natural balance of the meadow over any kind of commercial exploitation.
Which brings us to a really thought-provoking final question. Are ancient myths and religious reverence actually the earliest forms of environmental conservation? Think about it. When we look at the Nanda Devi Rajat, when we see the blindfolded priest, the silent prayers, the strict rules against noise, and the deep reverence for a fragile meadow, we see this brilliant intersection of faith and ecological preservation. It definitely leaves us wondering what other ancient traditions out there are quietly waiting to teach us how to protect our world today. That is all for this explainer. I really hope this journey has helped you see the Himalayas in a whole new light. Keep learning, and we'll see you in the next one.